Okay, so yesterday the Tigers won again, and Eduardo Rodriguez did it again. 7 innings, 4 hits, 2 walks, 8 strikeouts, no runs allowed. His ERA is microscopic. He is the best starter in baseball right now, and maybe the most valuable commodity in the game to take to the trade deadline. We talked about this yesterday quite a bit because there was a report Tuesday night. Jim Bowden had linked the Tigers in St. Louis. St. Louis, reading the story, I am making the assumption, coming to a logical conclusion that St. Louis has told members of the media they will trade an outfielder for a starting pitcher. And they've got a number of young outfielders, none of which blow us away as current major leaguers or elite prospects, the names that were floated out there. But Eduardo Rodriguez, it would be a player that would be coveted by a team like St. Louis, who had Super Bowl, World Series aspirations, and have gotten off to a brutal start. But Eduardo Rodriguez would be coveted right now by any team that has a goal of winning a World Series. And Gator, the longer he keeps this up, the higher the price tag is come the trade deadline. And yet yesterday some of the responses got, my God, this guy's so good. Why are we trading him? That's what some of the fans think. Now, the big part of it's the opt-out. He's 30 years old, and if they had him under contract for the rest of this year and 3 more and he couldn't do anything about it, that's one thing. The opt-out is at the end of this year, he can decide to become a free agent. He can decide. And if he's this good for the rest of the year, guess what he is likely to do? Decide to be a free agent. So you got to ask yourself, lose him for nothing as a free agent or trade him? I've decided, Gator, that there are 2 paths to get to a better place. One is keep him. And the other is trade him.
Well, look at you.
Yep. How about that?
Coming up with 2 paths, huh?
2 paths. Now, here's how, let me add some context because that was
elementary,
stupid simple. You're asking for a king's ransom for him.
Yes.
And if nobody is going to give you that, you know what you do? You shift gears and you add at the trade deadline. You say, F it. We'll go get somebody and add to Eduardo Rodriguez. This is an opportunity to do one of 2 things. Reload for the future or reload for right now. I am reloading one way or another. Because if he's pitching this well and they're hanging around in this stupid division and have a chance and nobody's going to give you a king's ransom for Eduardo Rodriguez, then I become a buyer.
Well, they have 7 games against the Twins before the trade deadline. They'll have 7 games, and it's towards I believe it's the end of June when they play them. And that's going to make some difference. Middle of June, they play June 15th through the 18th, and then again the 23rd through the 25th. The trade deadline will be at the end of July. So those 7 games in June.
80 days away.
Yeah, but the 7 games in June will give you a pretty good indication of where this team is, right?
Yep.
Because this would be against the division-leading team, the team everybody feels like is the class of the division. How do you stack up against them? They're 2.5 games behind them right now, which is remarkable, with a 17-19 record. A lot of games to go before the trade deadline, and those are opportunities for the team as a whole to close the gap or overtake. But on the other side, it's also an opportunity for Eduardo Rodriguez to come down to earth because this is unbelievable what he's done through the starts so far this year. This can't continue like this, but can he continue to be, very good as opposed to lights out good? Yeah, he can. He can, but and if he is, testament to the Tigers coaching staff and to Eduardo Rodriguez for getting it done. And then maybe we should start expecting those types of things from the other guys too. Like, hey, Lorenzen, we like the every other start. You're really, really good, but let's improve on that every other and make it 2 out of 3, and do the same thing with everybody else in this rotation and start to see that. And So then you'll know it's the staff and it's not just some sort of statistical anomalation with what's going on with Eduardo Rodriguez.
Well, there are two teams that are dreadful right now in baseball, and maybe as important as their games against Minnesota, their games against Kansas City and Oakland. And the Tigers play 13 games against those two teams, who have combined to win 19 games so far this year. Oakland's won 8, Kansas City's won 11. Detroit could really feast on some teams that are awful. I mean, they appear to be terrible. And that could really put them in a good situation. But I think you clear the path to do those two things. You clear the path to sell and to buy. I don't think if you have Eduardo Rodriguez and he is still worthy of a king's ransom, chances are the Tigers are still in this thing. I mean, not completely, but chances are they're hanging around and doing enough in this division.
Yeah, buying is going to be a harder, pardon the opposition here. It's a harder sell.
I know.
Just because you have to give something to get something of value. What do the Tigers really have to give up? I mean, they have some prospects, but I don't know if they want to give up on these guys that are perhaps as promising as they are in the minors right now to take a fledgling run at something that kind of comes out of the blue here. What we liked is what Scott Harris has done with most of his moves have paid off already. And like, wow, that kind of paid off. And the guys they have are simply upgrades over the Castros and Reyes and Candelarios of the past. That these guys here right now, they're gelling well. You know, McKinstry's playing well, and Vierling is a nice addition. And, you know, you got to like what Abangas has done and certainly Lorenzen as well. But do I want to let him cook a little bit when it comes to free agency? And then you say, hey, here's the checkbook. Instead of nickel and diming it, giving you real money. And that happens in the office.
So the one thing I'll say is yeah, there's, you know, what do they have to sell? Scott Harris has a formula. Scott Harris has players and certain things that he's looking for in prospects. I think there's a good probability that some of the players that Al Avila drafted are players that Scott Harris wouldn't have. So they're players that we're kind of waiting to see.
Could be, yeah.
Parker Meadows or Colt Keith that might fall into that category. That has some value elsewhere. Other teams may be interested. We here in Detroit have heard about him and are thinking about him.
See what Ty Madden did last night?
And guys like that could be dealt. And so I'm looking to go one way or the other, and they're both kind of extreme. Sell high with Eduardo Rodriguez or F it, buy.
Either way, and yes, it's basic. This is what you do. But either way, you've got time to worry about it. Right now it's way in the back shelf. Yep. I don't even consider it now, and I doubt they're getting calls right now about Rodriguez from other teams. They will, and they'll come en masse in, say, 4 to 6 weeks if he continues to pitch this way.